parents do we have in the house here today? And so that's a lot of hands. That's good. I'm preaching to the right people. That's awesome. Because as a parent, like my son, he's 9, about to be 10. So, I've been doing this forever, but I've been doing it a good while. And as a parent, there's one thing that I feel I've had need of more than anything. And that is patient endurance. All right. Pastor Bryan, he's been doing this message series on Are We There Yet? And my response is, you have to wait. You may not be there yet, but you're going to have to wait. You're going to get there, but you're going to have to wait. And the way we do that is with patience and endurance. And God is going to be there. And as a parent, I've experienced different struggles. When my son was first born, he spent his first 21 days in the hospital. And those 21 days felt like 21 years. It was the longest time, but there was endurance that was required, and I got through that. But not even recently, this past summer, our son, he was playing baseball. It was his first year in baseball. Absolutely fell in love with it. Like, the kid loved baseball. I was so glad me and him get out and throw the ball. I didn't too much care for baseball when I was younger, but I just loved being able to get out and throw the ball with my son. And so he fell in love with baseball, and then we were like, he loves to swim. Let's sign him up for swim. So he gets on this swim team, and so we're at the beginning of the summer. We just stepped in as youth pastors, and it's like, okay. And then we got Master Mission coming. We're like, all right, this is great. And then we've got baseball. Oh, all right, good. And we think that the baseball season is going to be over at the end of the schedule. But turns out there's playoffs. And though his team had only won one game the whole season, they decided to go on a winning streak in the playoffs. And so we had swim set up to start right after baseball. And then there was this season of overlapping things where we had swim, we had baseball, we had master missions, we had just figuring out how to youth pastor. And there was this level of leaning on God that we had to do. And it felt like that time was just long. And in the middle of it, each day felt long. They were good days, great days, powerful days with your students and with our son and all this stuff. But they felt long, and we needed endurance to get through that. But looking back now, those 2 weeks were a blur. That time just moved so quickly, and now we're into a whole different season. And I want to just give you a word of encouragement as parents, and it's something that I say to new parents all the time because, I got a couple years on them, I guess. I can give them some advice. It's something that I say to new parents all the time, and that is that the days are long, but the years are short. It's something just to keep in your mind to help you in those moments. Because when even recently, a year ago, I realized that it's been a year since the last time our son was in the hospital. And he had a bowel obstruction, and it was crazy. He had surgery and all this other stuff like that. And in that moment, it seemed like literally we found ourselves waiting in the hospital for him to poop. Like, he had major surgery. They had to make sure everything was flowing right and stuff. And so we're in the hospital just like, come on, bud. You got a little toot you want to get out? You want to toot a little bit? I mean, just waiting for something to pass because we needed to know it was going. And those days felt like so long. But looking back, it was 3 days, 4 days. Might have been a week. It's 7 days, 8 days. I'm getting it from the front. But looking back, that time in the middle of it, it seemed so long. But looking back, it was quick. And I just want to encourage parents as we get into this, just know that whatever you're going through, whatever season it is now, it's not going to last forever. That is also an encouragement and a warning. Because it's not going to last forever. So take advantage of it. Take advantage of the moments. Take advantage of the times that you have now, because there's going to be a time where maybe your young children are going to move out of the house. And that closeness that you had is going to be, that relationship that you had is going to be a little bit different. It's interesting to me because I have young men who have been in the youth, and I remember when they first came in, and now they're graduated, now they're adults living life. And there was a time where they would come over to my house, and we would hang out. And I don't know why it's hit me so hard. And even to this day, we still see each other and talk about how they got cheese stuck on my ceiling. And I don't know how they got cheese stuck on the ceiling. And I love these young men, but the way we interact in our relationship has changed. And I had to take advantage of those moments. And the same thing with your children. The days are short, or days are long, but the years are short. Time flies. So it's a warning and an encouragement, because whatever season you're going in through now, that you will come out of it. Man, that's a whole lot in a place that was just supposed to be the intro. So it's time to get into the word today. We done laughed, we done cried, we done learned something. This is good stuff. And so what I wanted to talk about, because as a parent, like I said, one of the things I felt like I needed more than anything was endurance. And it is a key ingredient in parenting, but it's also integral to our walk with God. It's something that we have to have in order to be able to walk with God. And faith is necessary, but faith is going to be tested. And when your faith is tested, you need endurance to hold on to it. And so what I want to do, I want to get into the word. And so if y'all can turn with me to Matthew chapter 14. And so in Matthew chapter 14, my wife says I have loading noises when I'm trying to do stuff, and I just make noises when I'm getting there. So y'all going to have to bear with me while I load for a second. All right, so Matthew chapter 14, we're going to start in verse 22, and we're going to go through this real quick. It says, immediately, this is talking about Jesus, he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. And so we had this moment where Jesus is sitting there, he's with the crowd, he's hanging out and everything else like that, and he tells the disciples to get into the boat, I need you to go over here. Well, while he tells them to do that, Jesus actually goes up and he's going to pray. So you guys go ahead, I'm going to go pray, I'll catch up to y'all later. Well, Jesus goes and prays, and it says he was there alone, and then while they're on the boat going across and everything else like that, there is a wind that comes up, and the disciples get a little scared. All these things are happening. They don't know if they're going to be able to make it. And Jesus finally, I guess, finished praying. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he starts going, but all the boats are out, and the disciples are like a mile into the water. They far away. So Jesus, being Jesus, just starts walking on the water. He's like, I'll catch y'all in a second. We just do this thing. And so Jesus is walking on the water, and he begins to walk past the disciples. Well, the disciples see him, and they get scared. Like, there's wind, there's rain now, there's somebody walking on water. It must be a ghost. Like, this is crazy. What's going on? But no, you have Peter who shouts out, and he says, Jesus, if it's you, bid me come. And we get to this spot in Matthew chapter 14, starting in verse 29, where it says, Jesus responds, come. And climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on the water and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. It's interesting to me that it doesn't, in this moment, there's a time where Jesus actually speaks to the wind and waves and tells it to calm. But in this moment, the wind has ceased. And I always, for the longest time, thought, oh, Jesus got in the boat. He said, all right, wind, y'all can chill out now. We back in the boat and everything else like that. But what if Jesus just knew that the wind was going to cease shortly? What if Jesus knew that the trial that he was going through, those things that distracted him, were about to end? And when he says, oh, ye of little faith, he's saying, if you would have just held on a little longer, if you would have just endured the little bit of wind, if you would have endured that little bit longer, you're about to have breakthrough. You're about to get to the other side of it. Peter could have just continued walking with Jesus if he would have endured a little bit longer. Walking on water. I don't know what situations you find yourself in, but I know we serve a good God who knows the end from the beginning, and he has good things stored up for his people. And if we can endure and hold on to our faith a little bit longer, we can find ourselves on the other side of the storm, on the other side of the struggle, and still walking with Jesus. But not just walking on the ground with you. He was literally walking in miracles. If we can endure and we step out on the word of God, we can literally be walking in the power of God every step that we take. But will you endure? Will you hold on? See, it's so interesting Because Jesus tells us, in this world, you will have suffering. And sometimes things come at us and we're thinking like, why, God? Why is this happening? And all this other stuff. And we ask these questions and we wonder, and they're legitimate questions. But I want you to know that God didn't cause bad things to happen. We just need to know that we live in a world that has sin in it. We live in a fallen world. So things happen, and it's very unfortunate. There's an enemy, and we live in a fallen world. So there's a lot of things stacked against us, so things are going to go bad. But even more than that, we have a good God, like I said, who has good things stored up for us, and he will work it all to the good of those who love him and are called according to his will. If we would just endure. Michael talked about, I think it might have been today or second service, it might have been first service during worship, but Michael talked about the walls of Jericho. And God gave them instruction on how to take down the walls of Jericho. And they followed that instruction. But what if they would have stopped? What if they would have gotten tired of walking? And we're like, we've been walking, my legs is tired, I went skating. Let me tell you, I went skating yesterday. We had a birthday party. I went skating, and me and a couple of guys, there was a race, and I was the youngest one out of all of us, and we got out there thinking we was going to race. I did win, all right? But I did take the skates off right afterwards. I started feeling something here in my thighs, and I'm like, I think it's time to let this thing go. What if we get tired of going around that thing and they would have stopped? They never would have saw the walls of Jericho fall. They would have never been able to go into the promised land. There's an endurance that your faith requires for you to hold on and see. But God is faithful. If you hold on, he will see you through to the other side. He will see you through to the other side. There's a level of endurance that it requires to walk this life of faith. You will have sufferings, Jesus said, but be courageous. I have conquered the world. Whatever you're going through, whatever struggle, whatever place you find yourself in, if you are, Jaylee talked about it, and I was like, man, she better steal half my sermon up here. Because in James, it says, consider it a great joy, my brothers, whenever you experience various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. But endurance must do its complete work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. When we hold on to God, when we endure the trials, it is doing a work in us that is producing and strengthening our faith. I wrote it like this: endurance is built by faith in God and maintained by our perspective. It's how we view things. Endurance is built by faith in God and maintained by our perspective. This is why James tells us to consider it pure joy. We have to look at the trials with a sense of joy because we know that God is doing a work through the trials. He could take us around everything, but there's a moment with the Israelites where they get freed from Egypt, and they're walking out of Egypt, walking out of captivity, walking out of bondage, and God tells them, I'm going to take you this way because you're not ready for that way yet. And there's things in your life that you want and you desire, and you want to get to the other side of that mountain, and you just want to go around it, but there's something that happens when God takes you over the mountain. There's a level of strength that you develop when God takes you over it. The Israelites, after they wandered around in the wilderness and they followed God with a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, and they followed God and all this stuff, by the end of it, their faith was ready for them to step into the promise. There's something that God wants to do in your life, and he's willing to walk with you. And now I can't remember who said that. Somebody said that again today. It's like the whole message was preached. He wants to walk with you through this thing. You're not doing it on your own. You're not doing it on. So take courage. Shift your perspective. We look too much at the mountain and not enough at our God. Because he's going to lead us. He's going to take us to places, and he's going to strengthen us in that time. Consider it great joy when you go through trials of various kinds. But it's about your perspective. It's about how you look at it. What are your eyes focusing on? What are you looking at? It says in Hebrews 12, verse 1 and 2, it says, therefore, since we have also such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. And he says this, let us run with endurance the race. Each of us have a path that God has called us on, has a destiny, something that we were created to do. And how we walk in that, how we do that is with endurance. How we complete that race, how we achieve those goals that God has created us to achieve is with endurance. But how do you endure? I'm going to tell y'all, it's right here. Keeping our eyes on Jesus, the source and perfecter of our faith. How do we endure? It tells us, let us run with endurance the race that lies before us. And God's so good that he tells us how we do that. We keep our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. And what did Jesus do? For the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross. For the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross and despised the shame. And now he is seated at the right hand of God. It gets me because I think of what was that joy? What joy did Jesus see when he was looking at the cross? Saw you, Kimberly. That was the joy. Christian, he saw you. Jesus, he saw you. He saw me. And he endured the worst of things because he cared for me. We were singing this song during worship. Something has to break. It's so good. It is something that's happened to me 2 times now when I hear that song. And we were singing that song and we're thinking about stuff that has to happen in our life and what we're desiring or what struggles we're going through. And we're thinking, man, we've got to break. Or maybe you've been attached to something, you've been chained to something, some type of sin that you can't get away from. And you're, man, I want these chains to break. And God keeps hitting me. And he keeps telling me, if you want that to break, first, you have to break. You have to allow me to come in and change some things in your life. Your desires have to break. And it needs to now become my desires in you. And what you'll see is those chains cannot stand to God moving through you. But you have to break and get yourself out of the way and be willing to lay down your desires, your wants, yourself, and pursue him. It hit me today because I'm a snoozer. I don't know if y'all know what that means. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. All right, so I've got it down to a system. I'll plan my snoozes out. But then, all right, and that alarm, it goes off every 9 minutes. I've gotten a little better, okay, because I used to have it right down to the minute, but I've realized that I'll sleep for a little bit still, and it'll take me a second to hear it. So I've got it 9 minutes, and it goes off again when I snooze it, so I have it planned in. I'm a snoozer. But there are times where, and this is confession time for me. This is some of y'all going to have to hold me to this, Mr. Isaiah, all right? Because there are times where I go to sleep, and God's like, I don't want to meet with you in the morning. And I didn't plan that into my snoozes, okay? So my alarm goes off, and I'm like, all right, I'll get one in, and then me and God, we can have our meeting. Blah. All right, God, I'm going to give you 9 minutes when this next alarm goes off. And if something happens, I slide into some real good sleep right there, that 9 minutes. And I just want to finish this last little bit. And next thing you know, I got time to wake up, brush my teeth, put on some clothes, and get out the house. And I missed that moment. Something has to break. There's an enduring that comes with my faith. And that was just confession with me. And it seems silly, a snooze alarm, but there are things in our life that we have to be willing to lay down our desires, especially when God is instructing us to. And there's a change that occurs because there's been times where I have listened and done the things of God. And I've seen the power of it. I've seen how it not just set me free and encouraged me, but when I listen to God, how it impacts other people. But something has to break. We have to endure. I just got out, that song just hit me today, and I just had to share that with y'all. But we're going to get back into endurance because there's this show that my wife and I watch. And we usually keep a show on our back pocket. When we sit, we want to relax. We put on a TV show and stuff like that. But this show we've been watching, it's called Survivor. I don't know if y'all have heard about Survivor. Some of y'all might be more like Pastor Bryan, who likes Alone. Was it Alone series? I know some people where they just out there in the woods by themselves. They got their skin stuff and everything else. See, I don't know. There's just something about the interpersonal relationships that happen on Survivor that just gets me. These people are in there, they just drop them on an island, and they're trying to be the last one standing after like 39 days and all this stuff, and they do different challenges and everything else like that. They give them like a bag of rice and a bag of beans, and they've just got to like find food and everything else like that. All the while, they're like voting each other off. Like, it's crazy, it's wild, it's cool. But these people, they go through some crazy stuff. And it never fails. Like, there's always these different challenges where they just have to hold on. There's one challenge where they get these guys on a pole and they put like these little bitty planks. It's just enough for your big toe to hold on to. And they've got to just stand on the side of this pole and they're just sitting there. And you got some people who are like sweating bullets 5 seconds in. You've got other people who are just chilling for like an hour and a half. And it's like, but they have a goal before them. Because the winner of Survivor gets $1 million. I mean, I could use that. I don't know my job, but I could use $1 million. The winner of it gets $1 million. And so what you see is the ones who are most successful in the game, the ones who can make it to the end, are the ones who can keep their eye on the prize, who can keep their eye on the goal of what they're going after. The ones who can endure have the right perspective. And what happens sometimes is you see people, they get in their emotions, they get in their feels, and they respond outside of something that is going to get them to the goal. It messes up. They don't make it to the end. They don't get the prize. They don't endure. It's about perspective. What did it say? Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that lies before him endured a cross and despised the shame and has sat down at the right hand in the throne of God. We're called to endure. In this world, you will have struggles. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't want you to go out unknowing, naive. Things are going to happen, but God is with you. God is with you. If I can talk to the young people for a moment. This season that you're in right now is not everything. It's not the end of your life. It feels like it. It feels like right now, this moment is so big that you'll never get out of it. You'll always be in school. You'll always be in this thing. And sometimes because it feels so big and it feels so all-encompassing in our life, we make decisions not based on our future, but based on right now. And if I can encourage our young people in here in anything, it's to keep the proper perspective. God is there. And the days, the school days, they seem real long, but the years are short. And one thing I've noticed, I'm I'm not that high of a level. But one thing I've noticed is that those years get faster and faster. they get faster and faster. And before you know it, you're going to be graduating. Before you know it, you're going to be in college. And it's just going to be different. If you can endure this, but not just endure for enduring stakes. If you can endure this for God, what you will do is establish a precedence in your life that will carry you into the future. Right now is not forever. So don't make decisions now so that you can have friends right now. Don't make decisions right now so you can be the popular one in school. All that stuff is good and fine, but how does it affect your walk with God? Because I've seen ones like JD, like Jesus, like Taryn. I've seen ones who have made decisions to go after God. I'm seeing Jeremiah coming up in the youth, our little sixth grader here, who have made a choice in their heart to go after God. And those decisions are setting a precedence in their life that will carry them through. And Pastor Rhonda has said it over this youth as a word. It's over the youth. And Pastor Jessica and I have grabbed a hold of it, that not one of our students will ever turn their back on God. And I believe it. And I believe it. Every Wednesday night, every opportunity I get with your students, that's where my heart is. Not one of them will turn away from God. But it takes endurance for that to happen. I do have just a little word of caution. Because it says in Romans chapter 5, verse 3 and 4, it says, we also rejoice in our afflictions because we know that affliction produces endurance. Endurance produces proven character. And proven character produces hope. And I have a warning because what I don't want us to do is endure something that we were never supposed to be in the first place. I'm not up here telling you that you're in that bad relationship and you've just got to endure and see it through the end. No. That's not what I'm telling you. Those are not the words. I'm not telling you just need to endure that thing that's happened to you. You got to endure this job when God's called you to a different job anyway, and you're saying, I just got to endure it because you're not ready to step out in faith into what God has called you to. Now, I don't know who that was for, but that was for someone in here. And so there's a difference. There are times when we are to endure, and there's times where we need wisdom from God. And I just want to tell a quick story before we close out, because we need this warning. Because I don't want us to sit here and just think that everything we have to endure. Because there's a moment where the Israelites had to endure and walk around the walls of Jericho. But then there was a moment when they went to battle Ai and they were defeated. And they did not accept that. Joshua went to God and got a new battle plan. Figured out what was going on. There was not an enduring that defeat. And so there's a difference in having wisdom and knowing when you need to endure. And God will give you and show you the difference in that. And it comes back to faith. I'm just going to tell you, where's your faith at? Is your faith in things? And your faith in God? Is your faith in fear? Is your faith in yourself? That would really be a good separator if you're supposed to endure this thing or if God is leading you through this thing. But there's a story in Exodus chapter 18. It says, starting in verse 13, it says, the next day, this is the Israelites, they've come out of Egypt, and it is going to explain everything in here, so I got you. The next day, Moses sat down to judge the people, and they stood around Moses from morning until evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw everything he was doing for them, he asked, what is this thing you're doing for the people? Why are you alone sitting as judge while the people stand around you from morning until evening? Moses replied to his father-in-law, hey, look, man, people come to me, inquire of God. Whenever they have a dispute, it comes to me, and I make the decision between one man and another. I teach them God's statutes and law. Moses' father-in-law says, what you're doing is not good. You're enduring this thing. You're waking up in the morning, and you're enduring the words of the people, and you're hearing, and you're making these decisions and everything else like that, but it's not good. You're not meant to do this. There's a better way. There's wisdom that I have for you. He says, Moses' father-in-law said to him, you will certainly wear out both yourself and these people who are with you because the task is too heavy for you. You can't do it alone. Now listen to me. I'll give you some advice, and God be with you. There are things in our life, and I'm so glad that Jaylee said what she said, that she doesn't have to go through this alone. And there are times in our life where we feel like we are going through this thing alone, and we don't have anyone to hold on to, and we've just got to endure this thing alone. But you don't have to. That will wear you down. It will take out you, and it will take out those who are depending on you. And I don't want that for you. There's wisdom to be had in that situation, but there's also perspective. You are not alone. In the end, if we are to endure, it's about our perspective. What are we looking at? Where is our focus? Are we looking to God? Are we looking to this world? Or are we looking to ourselves? God will see us through. We are going to have struggles. We are going to have trials in this life. These things are going to happen, and though our life may be like a roller coaster, our faith does not have to be. God has called our faith to be constant. Jesus told Peter, I pray that when your faith is tested, Satan desires to sift you as wheat, but I pray that your faith will see you through. Our faith can see us through these situations, our faith in God. And here's the thing that James says this in James 1 and 2. I'm about to end, Pastor Evan. I hear he's like a ninja. And so you may close your eyes in a second. He may just appear on the stage. Crazy things happen. But James chapter 1, verse 12 says, a man who endures trials is blessed, because when he passes the test, he will receive the crown of life that God had promised to those who love him. A man who endures the trials is blessed. God wants to bless you. And that blessing often comes through a test or a trial of endurance. But you can do it. You can hold on to God. I want each and every one of us to not have that short-lived faith. I want each and every one of us to be walking in the blessings and miracles that God has for us. But we have to hold tight to our faith. There are times where you're going to get a diagnosis or a report, or you're going to find yourself here, or you come in, and students, you go home and your parents are arguing, and you're in this place. But if you could just hold on to God, not let the situation around you affect where your faith is at. If you can hold on to him and endure, he will bless you. He will see you through. A man who endures trials is blessed, because when he passes the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. I just want to say this line one more again that I wrote down. Endurance is built by faith in God and maintained by our perspective. There's a scripture that I want to leave you with, and it's just so Spirit-led. I love how Spirit-led this church and our pastor and the people of this church are. Because literally there were scriptures that I'd written down and stuff that were just spoken out on the stage during worship and throughout this day. And to me it was a confirmation, and I hope you take it as the same. But there's a scripture that says, those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings like eagles and soar. Those who wait upon the Lord. And that's what enduring faith is. It's us waiting on the Lord. And he will provide strength to you. He will see you through. We have to stand with him. Hold on to our faith. And I cannot wait to see you guys walking on water with Jesus, because you've went through the storm and you have endured, and now you're going to be walking in the blessing.